Hello and welcome to Dev Talks on this second episode of the Neighborhood Watch. I have with me Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, a retired Director General of the Artillery, an author, a strategic thinker with his own blog and more than 200 articles. I've had the privilege of talking to him multiple times, and here is one more analyzing the activities around India's neighborhood. Welcome, sir.
Thanks a lot, Adi. It's been a pleasure interacting with you and look forward to it.
Thank you, sir. So, I'm just going to recap what Neighborhood Watch is for our viewers. It is basically a study of what is happening around the place, wherein myself and sir, we try and make sense of the situations and the developments around India. Try and join the dots, as per se. Sir, would you like to add anything before I begin, sir?
Yeah, normally what we're going to do hereafter is that we'll give a cap of the entire area so that you get a sense of what's happening in the entire area. And then we'll pick up one or two interesting, topics or in the neighborhood which have value for India and for which India has to start thinking. So with this, Adi, why don't you give a cap for today?
Sure, sir. I'd like to start with Pakistan. Interesting development happening in Pakistan, wherein they are now getting ready for their FATF meeting, which is scheduled in June. The Pakistani debt problem doesn't seem to go away because the Chinese have actually refused $3 billion of a loan that they were supposed to repay on, which is basically the repayment of the part of the CPEC projects. That's going to be interesting to see how the Pakistanis wade out of
Yeah,
that.
you can't keep Pakistan out of the
One can't
equation.
discuss
Yeah,
the, yes, absolutely, sir. It can't happen. So there's another interesting thing. The Pakistani Air Force came out and said that the Nasirabad area, they're going to be making an airport in Balochistan for that matter. And there is a lot of rumor and strife which is talking about the US taking up that base for their use in Afghanistan. Of course, there's been a rebuttal coming in from China. Again, a tight rope that the Pakistanis are going to be walking on to. As a matter of fact, I'll move over from Pakistan to Afghanistan. There was an interesting article that was published in the South China Morning Post, which talked about the possibilities of Chinese actually putting in peacekeeping forces, if I may use that term, or observers in Afghanistan. But last time we had discussed that the Chinese were trying to push the Afghanis to complete that road in the Wakhan corridor for their own purpose. And the general had
yeah.
actually explained to us.
Let's see, interesting development. Let's see how it goes. Maybe a couple of months down the line, we'll take it up.
Yes, as a matter of fact, sir,
Yeah.
I tried to explain to us what the significance of the Wakhan corridor is and why the Chinese are doing what they're doing in that area. As a matter of fact, the Chinese have activated their base in Tajikistan, which is about 12 kilometers off Wakhan corridor. So what sir said last week is actually coming into focus, wherein the Chinese are going to start manning that area. This all comes under the light of an incident that happened on the 5th of November last year. So I think our point of doing a neighborhood watch is coming out very clearly because news is separate. It is only when you join them together that you get a perfect picture. On the 5th of November, the Secretary of State had removed the East Turkestan Islamic movement off the terrorist list in the United States. So East Turkestan Islamic movement is the movement which is it's called the resistance movement within Xinjiang. And the Chinese are quite wary of it. So again, this is something that we had discussed last time. This is
Yeah.
on the background of some Chinese spies that were caught in Afghanistan, and they were, as a matter of fact, deported from Kabul in December 2020. I don't know how many of us would have actually seen this particular news, but it makes quite a lot of sense. Moving to the Central Asian area, India is doing its military exercise, which is known as the Khanjar 8 with Kyrgyzstan. It is interesting to see that India is still doing this exercise with the army and the air force in the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic and the Chinese sitting on our border, as a matter of fact. It is also interesting to see that the Russians are allowing this activity to go on because Kyrgyzstan is a member of the CSTO, which is the Collective Security Treaty Organization organized between certain post-Soviet states. It's an interesting development. So does this happen pretty regularly?
Yeah. Kyrgyzstan and India have had good relationship.
Hmm.
Even Tajikistan and we have had good relationship, and we've had training exercises and deployments and all that.
That's
I think right
interesting.
now there is a medical team also in Tajikistan.
Yes.
In fact, one of my MOs who was with me when I was at GOC is deployed there.
Oh, okay. So our hands are spreading around, especially the
Yeah.
military. I think our
No, it's Central Asia, we've had a presence.
Hmm, hmm. That's interesting, sir. Moving on to Sri Lanka, I think this has been there in the news quite often. I think the Sri Lankans have not learned their lesson after Hambantota. Their parliament has actually passed a very controversial bill allowing the Chinese to make a special economic zone in the reclaimed part of about 270 odd acres of land close to the Colombo port. The rumors are that they will be using the Chinese yuan as the currency of transfer in that place, but the Sri Lankans are not really confirming it. There is a bit of opposition to this move within Sri Lankans, but that legally at the moment has been sidelined because the timeline has quite as much passed. Another small thing to note in Sri Lanka is that the vaccines are Chinese over there. So those of us who want to travel to Sri Lanka after the pandemic, let's be very careful. Uh, Moving on to Bangladesh, we will discuss Sri Lanka in a little more detail, but I'd like to move on to Bangladesh, who has been rather quiet on the international front after the spat with the Chinese ambassador, as we discussed in our last episode as well. Was using Indian vaccine, which they were buying for about $5 a shot. Today, they are buying their Sinopharm from China at about $10 a shot. So that's interesting. This is on the backbone of something that we in general were discussing some time back. Bangladesh is talking about the Tista River basin development with the Chinese and looking for a loan of about $1 billion. It's a large amount of money, sir.
Yeah, there is. We'll discuss this in detail.
Yes. But having said that, there is also an interesting thing that the Sri Lankan and the Bangladeshis have signed an agreement of a $200 million currency swap that the Bangladeshis are giving to the Sri Lankans, because today the Sri Lankans are in quite a bit of a trouble in terms of their external debt repayment. They have about $4 million in their own foreign exchange this year, and their debt repayment is a little more than that. I think Bangladesh is coming out to be a country which everybody thought was economically backwards, giving a loan to another country. That's interesting, and that's very good for them as well. Moving to Nepal, another interesting country on the shoulder of India, where the president has dissolved the parliament and has announced fresh elections between the 12th and the 19th of November. The COVID situation, as predicted, has going up. There is similar scenes of what was seen in India with regards vaccines and oxygen shortages, and things are looking pretty bad for the Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli. If he's not able to get his act together for this, things are going to be very difficult for him. Apart from this, again, a humorous thing that the Chinese, of course, are putting a lot of pressure on the Nepalese with regards their border. There were some border posts that went missing last year in a place called Humla. This year, the same thing has happened in a place called Dolakha, and of course, other regions as well. There's been quite a bit of protest from Nepal, but one really needs to see how the situation will open up. Nepalese have received quite a bit of vaccine. It's about, I think, 1.1 million that has been received from India, and the Chinese have promised as of now to give about 800,000 of vaccines. Let's see how this story develops. And of course, this is going to be my favorite, the Myanmar issue, which is going on, which is the coup. Some very latest developments wherein there has been a resistance movement which is being formed in the country with some so-called separatist movements which were there before. They're all joining hands and calling themselves something called a national unity government. They had, as a matter of fact, said that they will be raising an army or a force of some kind.
Things are not going smooth there. It's going, it's still in the tailspin. It's not come out of that.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, the leader of the military has said that he will be, going all out to protect Chinese interests, especially after the huge amount of backlash that the Chinese factories faced in Myanmar with burnings, and I think about 35 or 40 million dollars worth of assets were destroyed of the Chinese. So that's a huge thing. So that's it for the recap, sir. Today I'd like to discuss with you something that I feel which may have repercussions, and something, as you said in the beginning of the video, India needs to think about, are going to be Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Myanmar.
Sure.
So I'd like to start with Sri Lanka first. With the port control controversy now unfolding, and there is obviously, as I mentioned, quite a bit of opposition to this whole thing in Sri Lanka, they not seem to have learned the lessons of what happened to them in Hambantota. What do you think are the implications for Sri Lanka as per se, and India, of course, looking at the proximity of the country?
See, strictly speaking, whatever is happening in Sri Lanka is their sovereign affair. Okay. We can't interfere in it, and for many reasons, we don't have much leeway against what is happening. But there are a lot of implications for us, and that is something which we have to understand. And as days go by, this will increase. Why am I saying this implications and as days go by, they'll increase? For the first time today, I saw in Hindu a clip about a news clip about protests in Tamil Nadu.
Mm.
Impact, and so there are major issues. There are many issues. If you can put up a map of that area, which we had discussed, and then I'll explain what are the implications. Right. If you have a look, you see in Sri Lanka, Hambantota and Colombo. On the mainland, on this map are highlighted Tuticorin, which is a major port of ours, Kochi, a major naval base, and Lakshadweep. I've done this with a purpose. Let's get to Hambantota and Colombo. Hambantota, as we all know, is already Chinese territory, really speaking. Right? There's a huge port there, which though no one uses, it's there. Now, the law, the way it has been passed, and this, it's like a free trade zone which has been enacted of Colombo, the port city of Colombo. This is the first stage of where Colombo or that part of Colombo port might go the Hambantota way. The difference between Colombo and Hambantota is a way of thing, and it doesn't affect a lot of trade activity and all that. Whereas Colombo is historically a very frequented port, if I may say. Now, in this part of it, if it is owned by Chinese, there are issues. Just see across the Park Strait, you see Tuticorin. Now, Tuticorin is after Chennai the next major port along this coast. It handles a lot of traffic, right? A lot of industrial traffic is through Tuticorin. And we are also looking, down south, from Chennai down south, at another space station as like Sriharikota, as our space footprint increases. Okay. Now, there are, news clippings coming here and there, and one hears that it is going to be around Tuticorin. So, if Colombo goes the Hambantota way and the Chinese presence there increases, just a short distance across, 200-300 kilometers, is Tuticorin, where you're going to have, which is one of your major ports, and also going to be a future space station where you're going to monetize it. So there are implications. And then you just look across the peninsula on the Arabian Sea coast, you see Kochi, which is your major naval base, and then Lakshadweep, right? Now already there are some issues about Lakshadweep having drugs and gun running and all that going on in these islands. So we need to be very clear the implications of any Chinese presence, any more enhanced Chinese presence in Hambantota or Colombo, right? Especially if Colombo goes the Hambantota way. How do you want to stop that is a question in hand. Now this comes to the next question. Is it time for us? See, when you talk of Lakshadweep, you have a EEZ around Lakshadweep. What does Lakshadweep gives you really? Lakshadweep gives you a whole lot of EEZ. Okay. Now that EEZ you need to protect. And it already we've had a case sometime back where USA did that freedom of navigation operations. Chinese also start doing it. You're in trouble, right? I wouldn't say trouble. You need to do something about it. So, is there a case for us to develop Lakshadweep into a military base? Right? The moment you have that, as you know, with some kind of facilities to land, maybe you have to reclaim some islands,
Mm.
like China has done South China Sea and linked 2 3 islands. I mean, I don't know the topography of those islands, but fundamentally, if you can put in place military installation out there with a proper runway and facilities like that, then you start controlling. If you can zoom out a bit, then from Lakshadweep, you start controlling the Arabian Sea, right? That entire area. Then you are in a better position than rather than doing it from your own shore.
Mm.
Okay, and then you force people to go around you. The moment you have some military presence in Lakshadweep, you force people to go around you or take your permission to go near. Okay, now this is something I think the government of India has to seriously start considering. This is one part of the story. The second part of the story is within Colombo, like you rightly said, lot of people don't like Chinese presence, right? A lot of the opposition in Colombo or in Sri Lanka doesn't like the idea of Chinese presence too much, and so as if this presence increases and this government continues to be stable, right, or rather propped up, I wouldn't say stable, is
Mm.
remains in place, you might see some issues there and a spillover of these issues coming on to Tamil Nadu. I mean, remember, the devolution of powers between the Sri Lankans and the Sri Lankan Tamils has not taken place.
Mm.
They were to devolve some, autonomy and powers and all, without not going into the legal thing. That they've been hedging, and whenever we remind them that we should do it as constitutionally, they've been hedging it. And Sri Lanka is in the boondocks as far as the UN is concerned, or USA or Western powers is concerned, right? So its lifeline is for the current government, at least its lifeline is China, and the fact is that their finances are badly mismanaged. Like you rightly said, they've gone in for a credit swap and all. It just increases how bankrupt they are. So I think we need to start looking at Sri Lanka a little more seriously.
Mm.
Whatever happened so far and what we have done is one part of the story. What's going ahead is another part of the story. Because let's be very clear, China has occupied the vacuum which you know, created in Sri Lanka. Whether you will be able to reverse is the question mark. And more importantly, whether it is Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, or Nepal, or Myanmar, or wherever, unless we are internally back to keel and strong, we will have problems.
Mm.
A lot will depend on your vaccine diplomacy or restarting your vaccine diplomacy. Okay, maybe you'll not do it at that level, but definitely for these 3 4 countries, you have to start thinking of something seriously. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So one thing one can see about Sri Lanka is that it's the problems there don't seem to be coming to any sort of a conclusion, or it's not in a similar position as Pakistan, as we say, but there are quite a bit of issues internally as well.
Yeah, their internal issues are the issues which are, look, for any country which has internal issues, it will have an external play.
Yeah.
Similarly, for Sri Lanka, which has, I wouldn't say it's a divided nation, but it's a nation which is not yet fully reconciled. The Sinhala Tamil problem is there. It is not, you can't wish it away. With all these, if it reconfigurates and it touches Tamil Nadu, we have problems. Okay. That is one part of the story. The other part of the story is Chinese presence there.
Mm.
And whether China operates something from there or not, or whether it becomes a military base there or not, the fact that China has, after Hamban in 2 key ports, it has virtual sway, and those 3 key ports are next to us, means that we have to do something.
Correct.
And the fact that illegal activities are increased in Lakshadweep doesn't give me comfort.
That was a bit scary news, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, see, these are the first things. One, at this point of time, probably we're reading too much into it, is one way of looking at it. But the fact is that China is looking for bases. And if China is looking for bases, and if these two, one of the two are to be turned into bases, you need to have bases to counter it.
Yeah.
Tuticorin will never be a military port. Everyone knows it, right? But Kochi is. And if you have Lakshadweep as a military installation and something like Andaman Nicobar in a smaller frame, then you are strong. You put your air defense into it and make it into a air defense zone like China has done and declare it. Then no one will do anything. But for that, again, I come back to the original thing. For all this, you need to think outward. Today we have to think, we are only thinking inward.
Correct.
Right. And my worry is that while we get over the vaccine part of the inwardness, will we get over the political part of the inwardness? That will dictate how outward we look. I mean, I don't want to be political, but there are political equations in this, because Tamil Nadu government is not totally politically aligned with the central government.
Yeah.
So we can't wish it away.
Yeah, of course. Democracies, I think, have that one big,
so
funda.
That will have its impact on others. So the same issue with Kerala also. So this is something we have to be cognizant of. Right? It doesn't matter which party. It's a matter of India.
National security, yes.
National security, yeah.
I think that one thing has to come out. I mean, no matter how much the difference are there in USA, when it comes to national security,
they are on one page.
They don't do anything.
There's no compromise, right?
Yeah, that's true, sir.
Yeah.
So the Nepalese parliament, as we discussed, is actually dissolved. I mean, KP Sharma Oli Saab is just sitting there as a caretaker prime minister. He's got his own issues there. The Chinese ambassador is supposed to be running rampant in that area. The country is soon and fast becoming a big pawn in the battle between India and China. It's probably something that all of us realize. My question is not that. My question is, does Nepal know what is good for itself?
Well, I will not put it as what does Nepal know what is good for itself, because its politics are playing out. And the people of Nepal will speak and vote whichever government comes into power. Or rather, they'll vote. Once they vote, whichever government comes into power will come into power, and we'll have to deal with it. Whichever. I mean, you have to accept that. The good thing in this entire story is Nepal is still democratic. Okay. Now let's look at Nepal-China issues. Yeah, they've come to vaccine aid. A lot of aid is coming into Nepal and all that. But Nepal has not gone the China as per the China copybook. Despite the best efforts of China, this parliament is dissolved, and it's a lame duck government there. Now, after all the lot of bonhomie which we saw last year and all that, suddenly the Nepalese have realized that they have issues with the Chinese border. See, the Lipulek area and all that was instigated by China. Okay. So that Kali River and that, in the western end of Nepal. So now, having been instigated, having been puppets in the hand of China last year, this government suddenly got into a problem with them. And now China is, like you rightly said, at Dholaka and the second place, I'm forgetting the name. They've asked they've demolished structures and things like that, and Chinese structures have come this side, and boundary pillars have been taken off. So there's an issue developing there, right? And that will become emotive with the Nepalese as things go. See, the point is this. Nepal is an independent sovereign country. We have to treat it as such. We've had problems with Nepal. there was a case of the barricade which we had in 2015. Now, also we went and we were the first responders for that earthquake. Somehow both these worked at cross purposes with each other, and we got out of the earthquake with not great honors. Okay, that's something. We also have to forget that there are a whole lot of pensioners, army pensioners in Nepal.
Mm.
We have that hold in the hinterland. We understand Nepal better than anyone else, and still till date, people from Nepal keep coming to India for their rosy roti. They don't go to Srigatse or someplace for work. They must be going, some of them. I'm not saying no, but the bulk of them come here. And that's the feeling I get when I speak to Nepalese who are working around here. There's a whole lot of Nepalese population in the south. Yeah, they go by train routes and Viratnagar route and all that. So, and these are not Madhesis. They are, hillmen, hill people. Okay, they come down. So that links are there. You can't wish Nepal away. Nepal will never go to China completely. They will always, the people will always lean towards India. We also have to realize that it still remains only Hindu kingdom, or rather Hindu state. Okay. Yeah. So all these, it's a complex thing. It's actually getting more complex. And if I say this instability gets you a chance to mend fences, but again the question is, are we in a position to do so? We need to. We need to help them through their own democracy. And no one can help them better than us because of the linkages, roots, everything. So can we do it? For that, I feel the state governments of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh have a role to play. Even North Bengal or Bengal, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, these Uttarakhand, they have huge. Bihar and UP have large land borders, Terai region and all that. So that we have to use at micro level rather than trying to do everything from the center. The states can do a lot, right? The states can help, with the local districts in Nepal across the border, a little higher, right? And then other things. There are so many things which we can do to help them, and we need to regain our, I wouldn't say role. We need to regain our respect in Nepal, as simple as that.
We have some work to do there, sir.
Yeah, a lot of work, and especially what you said about vaccines and all that. And you have to live with the fact that China is going to make inroads into Nepal.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
And our thing should be very clear. Okay, let China make inroads. You can't stop it. Let them be at Kathmandu and the north of it. Don't let them come into the Terai area.
That's what they actually want. They wanted
they want
border, some amount of their forces to be manning the border between Nepal and India. Yeah. That's a no, I think. So moving on a little further east, with regards Myanmar, it's a difficult situation, as we were discussing before, and the military doesn't seem to be yielding. There are cases and there are counter cases and a whole lot of legal stuff which is happening there. I also mentioned that some of these groups, one of them is known as the Kirti Army, and then there is the Chin National Front that are getting together with some of the rebel, if I may use that word wrongly, by the way, ministers or lawmakers from the previous government. They formed a National Unity Front, which they're trying to, resist the army and stuff like that. How do you see this situation opening? Where one thing is, for any front, they will be needing a lot of money. They'll be needing arms. They'll be needing a lot of logistical support. Where do you think all that stuff will come from, and how do you see the situation opening out?
Drugs. One point answer. You're looking at the golden triangle. Okay, drug money is rampant out there. Smuggling is rampant out there. China A lot of Chinese arms get smuggled through the Yunnan border. So
Truly.
it's a existing trade, right? Plus everyone is on to his own, and plus Myanmar is full of minerals,
Mm.
rubies. It's got oil. It's it's rich. Only thing is, it's not been well managed or economically been beneficial to the people. The right. Uh, Now, where does this current situation go? There's a long way before any stabilization will come. Knowing, see, you have to understand that Myanmar, if you mirror the area of Mizoram, Manipur, and Nagaland, other side, same. So whatever problems you have here will be there also. Same ethnicity, same. So all these, it's a if you go into the northeast, besides the normal what we know NSCNIM and ULFA and this thing, every third district has a militant organization, local resistance force, national army, and so every four villages of the same group will have an army of their own. It could be nothing. It could be two pitchforks and a bloody haystack. But yeah, that's how it is. That's their tribal nature,
That's how
you
they are.
know, and they're militaristic in outlook because by nature they're hunters. Okay, they've been hunting for a living. So forming a armed resistance or army or resistance force is normal
Mm.
there. So that is what is happening in Myanmar, and of course in that since the drug running in China and religious issues and democracy opposition, so lot of things are happening, and you will find this going on. You will find this muddle happening for quite some time. Okay, and we will have a spillover this side, but
Yes.
that is not that much of a problem. We'll be able to control it. As much as how can we help Myanmar cut back to normalcy? That's a call we have to take.
Yeah. I was just,
Again, I get back. We are now. I don't think we're focused on it at all.
mm. We've been walking a tightrope with regards Myanmar. We've not really supported the military, although we have very good ties with the military when we did our cross-border strikes and stuff like that. We've also had good ties with the democratic government. So India has been kind of walking a very tightrope with this.
See, we have the best credentials in Myanmar in terms of with the military, with the civilian government, with the people, with all kinds of people. And my own view is we need to take a positive step on it.
Mm, mm. Interesting. Sir, I'd like to, I'd like to actually ask you one other question. In this whole thing, the Chinese have been keeping very quiet. They've actually just supported the military in this whole thing by not, by blocking a resolution and this and that here and there. But more or less, they've been very, very quiet about it. They've not put in this thing, and the Chinese media also doesn't talk that much about Myanmar, although they love to talk about their issues here and there, which are around the place. But this
See,
is one place.
yeah, because their own business interests, everything is at stake, and the people are not for China.
Mm,
Neither is the army. You see, Myanmar is a very difficult country to handle, and the Chinese know it. And probably the Chinese know they don't want to get involved in Myanmar because if they get involved beyond a point in Myanmar, they'll have to put in their army, which is a bridge too far.
I think Chinese are wanting to put their army everywhere, sir.
Yeah, no, the Chinese don't want to put their army anywhere. That I'm very clear of. They'll be sucked into it. But they are looking at Myanmar. They want to be goody goody with everyone, buy out people, and put their China Myanmar economic corridor through and get on to KAQ
Mm.
and fix the Indian Ocean. That's their major aim. But unless there's stability in Myanmar, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't have that old Lido road is a quite unstable road which goes into Yunnan. 500-600 kilometers of one line, whether it is oil pipeline or a road, what is it? It's nothing. Going through jungles where all kinds of armies are floating around. Uh, not the greatest of investments. And if that road gets cut and that Kyakpo is marooned out, China has bought it.
So I'd like to end this thing with a little bit of a light subject. There is, of course, Pakistan is considered as a light subject nowadays when we talk about it, because one always develops a little bit of a light heart after thinking about Pakistan. There've been contradictory statements from the army. There've been contradictory statements from the government. They talk about giving a base. The government says no, this, that. My question is not all that. My question is Imran Khan on his way out now? Is it finally that time that the skipper will lose his team?
See, I think I don't think he will be replaced.
Oh, really?
My this thing is they don't have a replacement. They don't have he's indispensable to the army at this point of time, right? And at this point of time, if they have a change of government, political instability, everything, it will only compound their situation till September. See, whatever Imran Khan is, if you notice in the past 1 month, they have not been that badly off. Pakistan is Pakistan, all kinds of issues will be there. Okay. And the opposition is not making too much noise beyond a point.
Yeah.
Whatever they have ceded to the TLP, they have. So, who knows? Funny things happen, but you'll see TTP taking off. Some more attacks by Balochistan is happening. So, what happens in Pakistan tomorrow, I don't think Imran Khan himself can predict. Or for that matter, the chief. So, let us see how things move.
It's interesting because he's also on his way out. So, he's wanting to, obviously, every Pakistani army chief who takes an extension wants to leave us sort of a legacy of something behind.
Legacy Americans are giving them, no, Afghanistan.
Yes, sir, the Afghanistan National Security Advisor called the Pakistan a country of brothels.
Yeah, that's their choice, and
it's a wonderful degradation of diplomatic ties, if I may put it that way. And even the Taliban are not very.
See, you leave the semantics out. That tells you the future. I was reading somewhere, as of now, Taliban has about 12 or 14 districts of the 50 odd districts of Afghanistan. 30 odd districts are with the government.
Good.
The rest are up for grabs, and a whole lot of issues. IS might come in. You might find Al Qaeda resurgence. So there are a lot of competing interests which are going to come in Afghanistan. The moment those competing interests come, they'll develop in the next 3-4 months, and as they come, they'll start impacting Pakistan. So, and maybe 3 months down the line, our neighborhood watch would be focused only on Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I won't be surprised.
Do you think they'll be moving more towards? They'll have to look the other side more than they would have to look towards India. I mean,
let's see how it goes.
Yeah. So this has been great, sir. I think we've covered up quite a bit of the neighborhood, except for Bhutan. But Bhutan, as per se, is a nice, peaceful country, and I hope it remains that way. Apart from small incursions that have happened from the Chinese.
Maybe we could cover Bhutan and Bangladesh next time.
Yeah, we will do that, sir. Sure. Thank you so much. I think we've gone through most of the neighborhood. We've seen what the footprints are coming out. But I think, as the general mentioned, that the situation in Sri Lanka seems to be a little bit of a dangerous one. It's something that the Indian government must think about. The situation and the news coming out from Lakshadweep needs to be thought about. I think, in my opinion, and sir, please correct me if I'm wrong, we've got 2 outbases or outposts in terms of our island territories in Andaman and Nicobar Island and Lakshadweep. They should become unsinkable aircraft carriers, as the general also hinted on to. And we must be able to do a power projection in that area. At the end of it, it is going to affect our national interest and our national security, as per the latest moves in the country of Sri Lanka. Thank you for watching and keep waiting for another episode of the Neighborhood Watch.
Thank you.